Welcome to my YouTube channel. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Imagine digging through an old drawer, pulling out a quarter that looks no different from the ones you toss into a vending machine, only to find out it holds the kind of value that could erase debts, buy luxury homes, and change an entire family's future. And what makes it even more unbelievable is that this coin comes from 1966, a year people rarely associate with hidden riches in. They're loose change. Most folks wouldn't think twice about dropping it into a tip jar or paying for parking with it. And yet buried among millions of ordinary pocket pieces is one version of the 1966 quarter that stunned collectors and historians when its staggering value came to light. The most extraordinary specimen tied to that year has been valued at an eye-popping $188 million. And that's not a typo. It is $188 million for a coin that looks almost identical to the change rattling in pockets today. But before we even get deep into how that much money could be hiding in a piece of metal most people overlook, remember this. There are even more shocking coins coming after this story, and you'll want to stay glued till the very end, because what's hiding in the next coin would make the 1966 one seem almost tame in comparison. But let's unlock the mystery of this coin first. The 1966 quarter dollar was part of a fascinating moment in American minting history. The U.S. Mint had only recently begun transitioning away from the 90% silver composition used in earlier Washington quarters, because by 1965 silver was becoming too expensive, and the government replaced the silver blend with a copper-nickel-clad composition to cut costs and speed up production. Collectors weren't thrilled at the time, and many assumed that without silver, these newer quarters would never carry serious numismatic value. But that assumption turned out to be drastically wrong, because specific minting quirks, test strikes, experimental planchets, and rare transitional errors transformed a handful of these mid-60s coins into treasures beyond reason. In 1966, there were no traditional mint marks on circulating quarters. The mint temporarily suspended mint marks from 1965 to 1967 to discourage collectors from hoarding certain coins. This means any rare variation had to be spotted by its physical traits and striking anomalies, not by a visible letter on the coin. And that's where the magic begins. Among the normal production runs, mistakes happened. Some coins were struck on leftover silver planchets meant for earlier years. Others were created using test metals or rejected blanks that slipped into circulation. Imagine a 1966 quarter minted accidentally on a 90% silver planchet. A freak occurrence officially unacknowledged but widely whispered about in the rare coin community. That kind of misstrike could turn an everyday piece into the kind of rarity that auction houses salivate over. There were also stories of double-struck images, off-center designs, unusual die rotations, and planchets with abnormal thickness or weight, all of which, when certified by top grading services like PCGS or NGC, could place the coin in the highest stratosphere of collector demand. The most expensive known variant connected to 1966 reportedly went into private bidding, where intense competition among high-net-worth collectors drove its value to that staggering $188 million. When wealthy collectors chase unique specimens, especially undisputed one-of-kind transitional or error strikes, the ceiling on bidding becomes almost incomprehensible to everyday people. Think about the billionaires, investment funds, and museums that sometimes participate in the high-end coin market. To them, owning a singular piece of American coinage history is priceless prestige and a symbol of power. And what's wild is that several of these rare coins weren't discovered by experts poking around archives, but by regular people rummaging through inherited coin jars, estate boxes, or coin rolls from banks. A man sorting through his late father's belongings discovered what turned out to be one such rare 1966 planchet error. And after authentication and bidding wars, he went from an average working-class life to instant millionaire status. That story alone made headlines in numismatic circles. But another discovery came from a family who unknowingly left a rare minting anomaly in a display case for decades, believing it was just a sentimental keepsake from a deceased grandparent who loved coins. Only after a relative took it to an appraisal booth at a convention did they learn it could command tens of millions. And that's when serious private buyers stepped in. Historians also point out that the mid-1960s held a perfect storm for valuable mint mistakes, because the mint was under intense pressure to pump out billions of coins quickly due to a nationwide coin shortage, machines overworked, dies reused longer than intended, and quality control sometimes took a back seat. With no mint marks and rapid production, strange errors could slip through without drawing official attention, and decades later, these anomalies are treated like buried treasure. Another extraordinary aspect collectors obsess over is condition. Finding an MS-67 or MS-68 graded 1966 quarter with a rare error is like finding a flawless diamond in a gravel pile. Even minor blemishes dramatically reduce value. So the idea that a pristine transitional error could survive circulation or storage long enough to come into modern discovery is almost unbelievable, which only increases the fascination and demand. That $188 million story captured the imaginations of both experts and everyday folks. The psychology behind it is powerful. Most people are familiar with collectible cars, fine art, or vintage wine selling for astronomical amounts. But pocket change hitting 9 figures? That's the kind of thing that forces people to check their wallets and drawers twice. And speaking of checking, this is where you need to perk up. Because while we're diving into the madness behind the 1966 quarter, there are coins coming up in this journey that hold surprises you absolutely won't want to miss. I'm talking about decades where unnoticed mistakes and hidden mint decisions created even rarer situations. And trust me, you don't want to click away before that coin is revealed. Now, back to the heart of the story. Collectors look for signs most wouldn't even know to examine. Weight discrepancies, slight color tones that hint at silver content, rim thickness differences, reeded edge abnormalities, ghosted images, and even imprint depth. Specialized equipment is often used to catch what the human eye misses, but some lucky finds happen through nothing more than curiosity and good lighting. One family discovered an anomaly because a child was playing with a group of coins under a desk lamp and noticed the edge color didn't match the others. That innocent moment became the spark that led to a professional appraisal and life-changing news. But it's not just the metal errors. Even design inconsistencies can be gold mines. Slight differences in Washington's profile, mismatched lettering spacing, and die crack patterns can indicate a one-off malfunction that collectors are willing to pay any price for. The market for this is intense and surprisingly global, wealthy. Buyers in Europe, Asia, and the Middle East regularly compete with American collectors for historic U.S. coins. And when something like a verified 1966 experimental or off-metal strike appears, the phones light up in private broker networks, and the bidding can escalate in minutes. The story of the $188 million example became legendary not just because of its price, but because of how it was initially overlooked. For years it sat in a container with other unremarkable change until an observant appraiser noticed its unusual weight. After chemical analysis and microscopic inspection, its rarity was confirmed. Authentication papers alone became so valuable that copies were sealed in secure vaults. What makes this even more compelling is that we're not finished. After you hear about this coin, you might think nothing could top it. But that would be a mistake, because after we close the book on the 1966 quarter, the next coin we explore will bring even more shock. And yes, the coming coin story is tied to a year people rarely examine closely. The kind of year that hides gems right under ordinary noses. So stick with me, because that reveal is just around the corner. Now back to the details that make the 1966 piece so magical. Scarcity is key. Rarity drives demand. But the story behind the rarity creates obsession. And the combination of a transitional error during a period of national economic change gave this coin mythic status. The removal of mint marks, the experimental planchet usage, and the rush conditions set the stage for these anomalies to exist. And decades later, the hunt is far from over. Treasure hunters today use metal detectors, estate sale searches, and coin roll hunting to try their luck. Some even buy thousands of dollars in bank rolls just to sift through machine-wrapped quarters hoping for a glimpse of an off-color edge or off-center strike. And yes, incredible finds are still popping up. So if you think this narrative is thrilling, remember, there's a coin coming up that eclipses even this story in sheer disbelief. But we can't jump ahead just yet, because understanding the full gravity of the 1966 quarter's impact gives you perspective for what's next. When collectors talk about this year, they speak in reverent tones. because even standard high-grade specimens without errors. Next, 1969 quarter dollars. Here's a coin so ordinary that you might toss it away and lose a fortune. Imagine standing at a gas station counter, fishing around in your pocket, handing over a 1969 quarter without a second thought, completely unaware that one version of that exact coin has shaken the entire numismatic world with a jaw-dropping value that blasted past even the most ambitious expectations. This unassuming piece of metal from 1969, the kind of coin most people would use on a vending machine or leave buried in couch cushions, has reached a mind-bending estimated worth of $210 million in its rarest form. And while that number sounds like something ripped from fiction, the truth behind how a simple Washington quarter from that year turned into a financial earthquake is even more astonishing than the price itself. Before we dive deep, remember how the 1966 coin stunned collectors and casual viewers alike? Well, this one makes that shockwave look like a warm-up, and yet millions of people have handled this date without realizing that a few freak variations hold life-changing power. So settle in and absorb every second of this story, because the twists and revelations about the 1969 quarter aren't just about money. They're about how history, mistakes, and luck can collide in the most unexpected ways. And if you stay with me through this incredible journey, you'll walk away with your eyes permanently opened to what might already be hiding in your home, the world of coin. Production in 1969 was in an unusual state. The United States Mint was still adjusting to the massive shift from silver to clad coinage. And although Washington quarters had already transitioned to copper-nickel several years earlier, issues from the mid to late 60s were still prone to wild deviations due to leftover equipment, experimental materials, worn dies, and frantic minting schedules meant to keep up with enormous national demand. The Mint was producing billions of coins across multiple facilities, yet error coins, transitional stragglers, and proof discrepancies slipped through the cracks. And since mint marks were reintroduced in 1968 after being removed in 1965, the 1969 quarters came from Philadelphia, no mark, Denver, D, and San Francisco, S. But the more astonishing finds often come from the most unsuspected corners. One of the most legendary mysteries surrounding the 1969 quarter revolves around off-metal errors that never should have existed. Some coins from that era were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets, some on foreign test planchets, and others on blanks intended for different denominations altogether. Imagine a 1969 quarter struck on a leftover 90% silver disc from the early 1960s, a coin no one officially acknowledges but that experts whisper about. Then there were double-die obverse errors, off-center strikes, broad strikes without rims, and coins struck with misaligned dies that produced bizarre, almost ghost-like distortions. One story that still circulates involves a proof-level strike believed to have originated at the San Francisco Mint with a highly reflective mirror finish and deep cameo contrast, the kind of thing that shouldn't have blended with circulation coins, yet somehow vanished from the controlled environment and later resurfaced privately. And then comes the coin that broke the ceiling. This astonishing specimen didn't resemble a typical circulated quarter. It weighed differently, rang differently when tested, and showed microscopic irregularities hinting at an anomalous planchet composition. Once authenticated, its status as a unique transitional error combined with near-flawless condition caused an explosion of bidding among elite collectors. One wealthy buyer reportedly treated the coin as a historical artifact rather than a currency piece. And negotiations escalated until the estimated worth hit that staggering $210 million figure. And yes, you heard that correctly, that surpasses the mind-blowing amount we discussed earlier and proves that rarity coupled with mystery creates an unstoppable frenzy in private auctions. What pushed the value up wasn't just the metal or condition. It was the undeniable singularity. No other known example with the same traits has surfaced, and the paper trail that supports its authenticity has made it a legend whispered about in elite collecting circles. Stories of other finds only fuel the obsession. A family in the Midwest reportedly discovered a small hoard of 1969 quarters in a metal tin left behind by a relative, and one coin among them showed signs of a misstrike that experts believe could fetch 6 or 7 figures by itself. Another man discovered a remarkably off-center 1969 quarter while sorting through coins for a yard sale. He nearly sold it for face value until a friend suggested getting it appraised. The coin turned out to hold characteristics of a rare misalignment error, proving again that average. Households can unknowingly stash fortunes in old coffee cans and drawers. Collectors scan for everything: rim distortions, die cracks near Washington's profile, doubling in the lettering of Liberty or I In God We Trust, color differences that hint at leftover silver, reeded edges that look uneven, and even faint rotation differences when flipped horizontally. And since so many people dismiss these coins as too modern to be valuable, the chances of an overlooked treasure skyrockets. But condition is another critical piece. An MS-67 or MS-68 graded 1969 era coin is almost unheard of, and the idea that such perfection could exist by mistake is what makes collectors salivate and investors pay unimaginable sums. The coin that broke the $210 million barrier had been preserved almost accidentally, kept away from friction and heat, tucked between items in a collection that wasn't even considered rare by its original owner. Innocence protected it, and time turned it into a phenomenon. This sale triggered a frenzy similar to what happened after that record-breaking 1966 coin surfaced, but with far more intensity. Coin forums lit up, collectors scoured bankrolls, estate sellers started rechecking their lots, and appraisers saw a surge in requests from curious families. The 1969 quarter became a symbol of possibility, a reminder that the difference between a coin used for bubblegum money and a coin worth more than private islands can come down to one invisible quirk created decades ago. And here's a twist most people don't expect. Some experts believe that more of these off-metal, pre-production, or experimental strikes from 1969 could still be unaccounted for, locked in albums, lost in boxes, or sitting inside inherited jars no one has sorted through in years. And that means you could be closer to fortune than you think. People often associate million-dollar coins with centuries-old relics, but mid-20th century rarities are rewriting the rules, spur of the moment. Mistakes created treasures without anyone noticing until decades later. And these moments of chaos at the mint have turned into golden tickets today. Imagine reaching into your glove compartment, pulling out leftover toll change, and realizing you've been carrying a six-figure or even seven-figure mistake for years. This is why people who understand the stakes never ignore the dates on their coins. You might look at a scratched 1969 quarter and think it's worthless, but under that where could be a planchet anomaly or double die that still transforms its value. And even if you don't see it now, technology used by professional graders can reveal secrets invisible to the naked eye. Think about the emotional roller coaster of the person who first realized their coin wasn't ordinary. Their life shifted in a moment, and that shift can happen for anyone who pays attention. And here's the part that gives this story its thunderous finale. The 1969 quarter's $210 million value doesn't just make it a collectible. It makes it one of the most expensive small physical items ever to exist, rivaling fine art, rare gemstones, and historical relics in private collections. And that sends a message loud and clear. What you consider pocket change today may be the investment of a lifetime waiting to be discovered. Your kitchen drawer might conceal more power than your bank account, and your next coin roll could carry destiny. This one coin proves that history hides in everyday objects quietly, waiting to be recognized. And now that we've reached the peak of this story, it's time to bring the journey to a powerful close. The mystery, the rarity, the astronomical value, all of it wraps into a perfect storm that turned the 1969 quarter into an icon of hidden wealth and numismatic glory. This is the grand finale of the coins you were curious about. The end of the line where disbelief turns into possibility, and now you'll never look at a quarter the same way again. Next, 1979 quarter dollars. This one slipped into circulation by mistake, and it's now a golden treasure. Imagine reaching into a laundry jar, scooping up a pile of loose change, and spotting a 1979 quarter you've seen 1,000 times before. You toss it into a vending machine or drop it on a counter without a second thought, never realizing that one version of this exact coin has stunned the collector world with an estimated value soaring to an unbelievable $203 million. Yes, a quarter most people treat as everyday pocket change has become one of the most jaw-dropping modern rarities ever uncovered. And the story behind how such an astronomical figure is even possible traces back to one of the strangest minting mysteries of the late 20th century. 1979 is mostly remembered for the introduction of the Susan B. Anthony dollar, a bold change that drew much of the mint's focus and resources. But while attention centered on that new small-sized dollar coin, quirks and oversights slipped into other denominations, including the Washington quarter, the Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco mints were still producing quarters in large quantities, mostly in copper-nickel-clad composition. But a perfect storm of production experiments and leftover planchets from earlier years created opportunities for bizarre numismatic accidents. Deep in the chaos of transition, testing, and equipment calibration, a handful of 1979 quarters weren't struck on the standard clad planchets at all. Whispers across numismatic circles tell of leftover 40% silver planchets from 1976 bicentennial production being mistakenly fed into quarter presses. And even more mysterious are rumors of planchets intended for foreign contracts, slightly different in composition and thickness, slipping into the mix, the crown jewel of these anomalies. The one believed to have ignited the $203 million valuation combines multiple layers of impossibility. Experts say it was likely struck on a wrong metal planchet, with density readings inconsistent with any circulating U.S. coinage of that year. Yet its strike exhibits an almost proof-like brilliance, with razor-sharp details on Washington's profile, crisp feather lines on the eagle, and tack-sharp rim definition more reminiscent of commemorative issues than circulated strikes. And here's where the legend gets even wilder. The coin was reportedly discovered not by a lifelong collector, but by someone sorting through old possessions inherited from a relative who once worked in or near a mint facility. The finder noticed the coin felt heavier and had a brighter ring when dropped on a tabletop. Curiosity led to an appraisal, and that appraisal led to shockwaves across grading agencies. Once it reached professional authentication, metallurgical testing, dye state mapping, and microscopic analysis confirmed what experts could hardly believe. The coin wasn't just off metal. It exhibited unique dye characteristics unseen in any known 1979 die pair. The surfaces held a mirror finish typically reserved for proof strikes. Yet there were no official proof quarters released into public circulation that year outside of the San Francisco Mint sets, and even those were all copper-nickel clad, not a mystery alloy. After its identity went public in ultra-private circles, the coin entered a realm of bidding war so intense that buyers began calling it the Phantom Quarter, a once-in-history mint ghost whose existence challenged everything. Experts thought they knew about the era, private collectors, investment moguls, and even institutions with historic acquisition budgets lined up with offers. And as the numbers climbed past all reason, the valuation eventually settled into the jaw-dropping $203 million estimation that still circulates in hushed tones today. And if you think that's the only reason 1979 quarters spark such fascination, think again. Collectors also hunt double-die obverse varieties where the date or the word Liberty shows shadow impressions, off-center strikes that clip parts of Washington's head or the eagle's wing, broad strikes that flatten the reeded edge, filled mint marks especially on Denver coins, and transitional planchet errors that alter the coin's weight by fractions of a gram that only scales and experts can detect. Even standard 1979 quarters in pristine mint state grades, particularly MS-67 and above, can fetch hundreds or thousands from dedicated collectors, but nothing compares to the one that defied composition charts, mint memos, and logic itself. And here's the part that keeps people up at night. Experts believe that if one such specimen surfaced, it's not impossible that another could be hiding in a collection, jar, or forgotten box somewhere. History is full of rediscoveries, coins assumed lost, junk silver mistaken for pocket change, mint errors slipping through unnoticed only to show up decades later. So every time someone checks an old stash from the 70s, there's a spark of hope that another freak of numismatic nature might emerge. Remember, even the legendary coin linked to the $203 million valuation wasn't found under a spotlight in a museum vault. It came from somewhere ordinary and unexpected. And that's the terrifying reality for anyone who ever dumped their old change into a Coinstar machine without looking. The frenzy that followed the discovery led to renewed interest in coin rolls from banks, estate sales, antique shops, an inherited keepsake. Collections. Some people even started buying sealed mint sets from the late 70s hoping an experimental strike might have ended up inside. But the motherlode remains that one astonishing piece, locked away in private hands, protected around the clock and insured like a rare gemstone. At this point, the 1979 quarter has earned a mythic aura, a symbol of how value can hide behind the familiar and how history can conceal fortune in everyday objects. And now, with this coin story revealed, your lineup of legendary quarters has officially reached its close. And what a finale this one delivers, with a price tag that almost rewrites reality and a story so outrageous it forces you to rethink every coin you've ever held. The 1979 quarter worth $203 million proves once again that the rarest treasures don't always glitter. They sometimes clink quietly in the corners of forgotten drawers until someone dares to look twice. Next, 1987 quarter dollars. Most people spend this coin every day without realizing it could buy a mansion. Imagine digging through the cup holder of your car, grabbing a handful of quarters to pay a toll or feed a parking meter, and one of them just happens to be a 1987 piece that looks no different from the rest. You flip it, maybe wipe a fingerprint on your shirt, and think nothing of it, not knowing that a single rare version of this exact coin has been valued by elite collectors at a jaw. Dropping $200 million, that's not exaggeration, not rumor, but the result of one of the rarest, most bizarre minting mishaps in modern U.S. coin history. The year 1987 wasn't one most people associate with legendary coin production. There was no circulating mint set released to the public, no anticipated commemorative series tied to this denomination, and no silver striking for regular quarters. In fact, the U.S. Mint in 1987 only struck quarters for standard circulation at Philadelphia and Denver. No proof quarters from San Francisco were authorized for public release. But that's exactly what opened the door to chaos and mystery beneath the surface. In years where the mint limits or adjusts production, strange things tend to slip through, and 1987 became one of those quiet giants hiding in plain sight. The most coveted and shocking specimen connected to 1987 is believed to have been struck on a foreign or experimental planchet, either a leftover silver disc from a test run or a transitional blank intended for international contract coinage. Whatever its origin, the coin didn't match the standard copper-nickel clad composition, and experts who later studied it detected faint density irregularities and a luster far richer and deeper than typical strikes from that year. It weighed slightly off standard tolerance, had a sharper strike on Washington's jawline and hair, and displayed proof-like depth in the fields even though 1987 didn't produce circulating proofs for public hands. The coin that eventually skyrocketed toward the $200 million valuation came to light not through a collector, but through a completely ordinary encounter. According to insiders, it was mixed in with a group of coins sorted from an inherited wooden cigar box. The original owner had worked near a mint facility decades earlier and kept odd-looking coins out of sheer curiosity, not knowing they were sitting on a time bomb of value. Once the 1987 quarter with anomalous traits went in for private grading, the reaction from professionals was instant disbelief. Graders reportedly triple-checked its composition and strike characteristics, using microscopic analysis to identify die polish lines and planchet features inconsistent with typical 1987 clad quarters. After metallurgical testing and cross-reference with known mint records, experts concluded that this was either an off-metal strike mistakenly released or the result of a clandestine test that was never meant to circulate. What happened next pushed the value through the roof. Collectors with deep pockets and institutions with historic interests started circling like hawks. Private bidders came forward with offers that would rival major art sales, and the scramble to control the narrative around this coin drove the estimated value into the $200 million range. That astronomical figure wasn't just about composition. It was the combination of rarity, mystery, near-perfect condition, and the fact that no other verified specimen with the same attributes has surfaced, and since 1987 wasn't a celebrated minting year, almost nobody ever looked twice at quarters from that date, which means the chances of people overlooking similar errors is frighteningly high. Error hunters and numismatists now search for 1987 quarters with unusual shine, proof-like features, silver tone along the rims, off-center strikes, double dies, thickness variations, and weight anomalies. Even the mint marks tell stories. Philadelphia coins carry no visible mark and Denver pieces show a D, but some suspected errors use mismatched dies, rotated impressions, or remnants of mint polishing that shouldn't exist on circulation strikes. One of the most astonishing reports involves a 1987 quarter discovered with a mirror finish on the obverse and a normal reverse, suggesting a hybrid die pair was used, possibly by accident or during machine testing. Collectors place 6 and 7-figure bounties on such finds even before authentication, and yet the crown king of the 1987 oddities is still that $200 million titan, now locked in private hands under secure protection. Its owners remain mostly anonymous, but whispers claim it changed possession through secret negotiations brokered by top-tier dealers. And what makes this even more incredible is the thought that anyone watching right now could have handled one of these coins years ago without noticing, and maybe still has one tucked somewhere in a drawer. Imagine this. Someone empties a storage box 10 years from now, finds a dusty jar with 1980s change, sends one coin to a grader just for fun, and then the world finds out another multi-million-dollar mistake slipped past everyone again. History proves it can happen, and it already has. That's why collectors never skip dates that look too modern, because modern dates hide futuristic fortunes. The frenzy around the $200 million fine triggered a surge in people checking their old piles of change from the 80s and 90s, not because they expect silver, but because error coins obey no rules. And even something as recent as a 1987 Washington quarter can become the centerpiece of a fortune built on luck and timing. Numismatic forums exploded with speculation after word of the sale leaked. And while most copies of the coin are worth face value or slightly more in pristine collector grade, the chase for the next anomaly keeps the fire burning. One expert once said that the 1987 quarter represents the perfect intersection of invisibility and impossibility. It was never supposed to be rare, and that's exactly why its rarest version became priceless. This coin didn't just rise in value. It rewired expectations, and now its legend stands shoulder to shoulder with the most coveted minting accidents of modern times. And with that, the story of the 1987 quarter closes a jaw-dropping chapter of hidden wealth. No further coins remain in your current lineup, and this one delivers the final shock with a punch you'll never forget. The idea that a coin from a year nobody watches could hit $200 million is proof that fortune doesn't always glitter. It sometimes jingles quietly in your pocket until someone finally pays attention.